Dr. Kim Johnson sent me some hemp flour and asked me to make a product. So we've had a few trials here. As you would know, that a basic bread recipe, the flour weight is a standard sort of figure, and all the other ingredients are measured on that flour weight. So we have come up with a standard recipe to blend hemp flour into a dough and to make a bread. So I've got some hemp flour here, and from one of our other business partners, Batali's in Benalla, Andrew's mucked around with a little bit of hemp bread production as well, and he finds it quite pretty. So we've got a couple of things in mind, and so we have to try and make a bread that will have good volume and good characteristics so you can eat it. So our first trial was with 50% baker's flour, which is a strong flour, and 50% hemp flour. So we found that the bread was quite condensed. We didn't get much volume, and it's a bit heavy. So that trial, that had 60% water in the recipe as well. It was like a cake batter. It was runny. It just didn't have any gluten development in it at all. It just wasn't right. So we went to the using 40% water in the recipe as just a real. It's at the other end of the scale compared to the 60%, and that was just a heavy dough. It didn't rise, didn't get any oven spring when we baked it. So I went up to 50% water content in the recipe, and started to get some sort of a bread volume. So they're 50% baker's flour, 50% hemp flour. So then we thought we'd up the protein level of the baker's flour, and we went to 75% baker's flour and 25% hemp. We came out with quite a good loaf, and it had some good oven spring, good texture. Its abilities inside the prover and the oven really reacted well. So that was a good starting point. But then we sort of started to think it's a little bit gritty in your mouthfeel. So we started to make some trials with trying to soften or condition the hemp. This loaf here, we boiled the water content in the loaf with the hemp, and then we put it through a blender just to try and soften the grit of the hemp flour. It didn't really work. As you can see, it collapsed in the oven. We lost some oven spring. So we tried some other different variations. What we ended up with was that we got some boiling. The water content from the recipe was boiling, and we added it to our hemp flour, and we soaked the hemp for 1 hour, and then we made a dough from that trial, and we got some good volume, good texture, and the hemp has actually softened a bit, so you haven't got that gritty feel in your mouth. So we thought that this is our best outcome from all our trials. Our last trial was with plain flour. So when you're at home, you can, if you haven't got access to a strong baker's flour, you can use a plain flour. But as you can see, in the baking process, it has collapsed a little bit. So, but it's still a good loaf. So we've created a recipe. We'll make that accessible at some stage. The recipe is quite easy to make in just your home mixer, and yeah, so you can make a successful loaf at home.